Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining Dorsey Ross on this episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. In this episode, Dorsey interviews another special guest that will give you hope and inspire you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name is Bob Lotich. He is a financial coach married to a butterfly-chasing spender, so he gets it. His new book, Simple Money, Rich Life, is operating manual. He and his wife, Linda, middle-class couple, followed to pay off over $400,000 of debt and reach a personal goal of getting $1 million by age 40. He currently lives in Franklin, Tennessee, with Linda and their 3 children. Bob, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, Dorsey, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Like I told you, when we were discussing the possibility of coming on the show, I think this is going to be, a little different than what we normally talk about, because we don't usually, I think this is the first time we're actually talking about money and talking about debt and, how do we handle money? How do we handle finances? How do we get out of debt? Those types of things that we all deal with.
Yeah. So do you want to start there and just start chatting about that?
Well, we can do that, but I would like to open up with just a couple of easy questions first. And
Sure.
My first question is, what are your favorite things to do?
Yeah. Well, I'm a avid gardener. That's one of my favorite things, honestly, is just being out in the garden. I spend so many hours at a desk typing keys, so getting up and doing some work where I actually sweat a little bit feels really good. So I love being out in the garden. I have 3 little kids, so of course anything with them is fun. I actually enjoy cooking a lot as well, and so that's kind of what keeps me busy.
Nice. Besides doing what you do, what is your biggest passion?
Probably, based on, probably food in some way, like just from growing it, in the garden or cooking it and making it good. I think in some other life, I could have been like a chef. Yeah, I just enjoy creating good food and everything that goes into that. So that's definitely something for me.
Right. How did you become a financial coach? Was this something you always wanted to do, or did you do something else beforehand?
So I've pretty much always worked in the financial industry. So I worked as a personal banker, or actually a bank teller for a while, then a personal banker. And then I moved over to a financial services company. And so I was working there for many years. And so I've always been around money one way or another, but I never really thought I'd be a financial coach. And that was just kind of something that just kind of happened. It wasn't like, as I was a mess financially. And so I wasn't really expecting to be in this position. But as I kind of began improving my financial life and started sharing what I was learning, it just kind of naturally evolved into, coaching and helping people through our courses and stuff like that.
All the time we hear the word financial advisor. Yeah. And, going to them and asking them to help us to invest our money to stocks and bonds, Bitcoin, whatever is out there. Is there a difference between a financial advisor and a financial coach? And what would that be, and what would that look like?
Yeah, oftentimes there's a difference. I think sometimes terms are used interchangeably, but generally speaking, I think most people would say the financial advisor is there to help you invest your money and play that role in your financial journey. Some of them might help you pay off debt and help look at your spending and stuff like that. But generally speaking, that falls a little bit more into the realm of coaching. Financial coaching is a little bit more of that type of thing. Like, let's be strategic about how we're spending. Let's look at the whole picture, the entire financial picture. But financial advisor tends to be more towards like investment advice.
Tell us a little bit more about your story and how you how what you went through and how you from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a long story. I mean, we can start sharing pieces and I'll let you kind of direct me from there. Like I said, so what I consider to be the beginning of my story is when I was about 20 years old, living in a small Florida town, beach town. And I was completely broke. I had $7 to my name, and I found myself in a broken down car as I was trying to go pay my rent that was due in about 3 hours. And that kind of got me to it was my moment where I realized my life was a financial mess, and I wouldn't have admitted it before, but it was the point where I finally realized, like, all right, I need help. And then for me, that just led me to like crying out to God and asking for help, because my way was clearly not working, because it had led to, a really bad spot. And so out of that point, I discovered that the Bible had something to say about money, which I was fascinated by. This book, thousands of years old, still had information that was relevant for us today. And then I just began reading every book I could find about money as well. And so that combination of, reading the Bible, reading every book I could, I began to just start seeing progress in my financial journey. And then a couple years later, met my wife. We ended up getting married. And I was maybe a step ahead of her, like, still not in a great spot, still had tons of credit card debt. And she had a bunch of credit card debts. And then we get married, bring it all together. And we begin working arm in arm on kind of paying all of that off and going through that journey. But, it hasn't been a quick journey, but through the years, or one of the things that I often like to tell people, I actually have a chart in our book showing this, that people tend to think that financial progress is like this linear path where it's just like, a 45-degree angle going up on a chart. And I just don't think it works like that for anyone. I think you might start off that way, but then you go down, or maybe you'll go up a little bit higher. And it's just like this roller coaster ride. And especially at the beginning, it feels like you're not getting that much reward for the effort that you're putting in. It feels like you're putting in so much effort and you're getting very, very little reward, which is why so many people they quit and they give up when they're trying to pay off debt, when they're trying to save for retirement or whatever the thing might be. And what most people don't realize, though, is there's a point that I call the tipping point where, once you get far enough into this journey where you cross over that line that you envisioned, this linear line, and you cross to the higher end of it where now it works the opposite, to where you're getting more reward for your work with less effort. And this is where it gets really exciting, because it's like you're going down a hill with roller skates and the wind's at your back type of thing, where you're putting in a little bit of effort, but so much extra is happening for every little thing you do. And so that happened for us, I would say probably 3 or 4 years into our marriage, where all of a sudden it just felt like, okay, we're moving faster now. And that's when it just gets really fun.
What would the effort look like that you're talking about? Like you're saying less effort, but it's doing more. What does that look like? I mean, is that investing more? Is that saving more money? What exactly how would you describe that?
Yeah. Well, I've seen it play out for us a couple different ways. And so the first way for us, because our first financial goal was paying off all of our credit cards and car loans and stuff like that. And of which we had about $46,000. And so when we were first trying to pay off our first credit card, we had about $15 a month of disposable income to put towards that credit card. So it's like we just weren't making much progress each month, so we'd put our extra $15 to pay towards that balance, and we're doing it, but just feels like we're not making much progress. But once we got that first credit card paid off, now we have an extra $50 a month, because that minimum payment on that credit card was $50. And so now we have that original 15 plus an extra 50. So now we're putting $65 towards the next one. And so each debt, we end up getting more, as we paid off each debt, we have more and more disposable income each month to pay towards the next debt. And after we did that a few different times, it's like, whoa, it's like, all right, we're really starting to move faster now, because now we have $1,500 to pay towards our debt each month. And so as that increased, it felt like, wow, we're really starting to see some momentum here. So that was kind of the first thing. But then investing works the same way. Like, if you understand compound interest and how that works, like the power of, just beginning to put a small amount in and then watching that slowly build over time till it gets to the point that it's yeah, it's just like a big snowball rolling down a hill, just continuing to expand as each time it rolls, you know?
Yeah. So in other words, the more debt you pay off, the more money that you have to put towards something else.
Yeah, exactly. And so that could be investing, that could be paying off debt, that could be giving, you know, whatever the thing might be. But point is, it's like it just moves faster and it's an amplification of kind of what you want to do with it.
What is one of the biggest challenges in your life?
Um, I think that moment that that I talked about with me having the broken down car was a pretty challenging moment. But I think for me, if I had to pick one moment, it was, or not even moment, I'll say season. It was when I was working in a job, and this is a couple years into our marriage. I was working in a job where I was kind of pigeonholed. I felt like it was kind of like a dead end career path that I was never going to get out of. And I had all these aspirations of being successful in corporate America. And I was realizing that I wasn't, and I wasn't going to be. And I was doing work, honestly, that I wasn't even good at. And I was working really hard. I've always been a hard worker. But when you're doing something that you're just really not gifted for, a lot of times you can work as hard as you want. It's just not going to make a difference. And so I remember this quote by Einstein. He said, if you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, he will spend his whole life thinking that he's an idiot. And it's like, and that's how I felt, and I think a lot of people feel like that, where it's like, yeah, it's like, I'm a fish. I don't want to be racing a squirrel up a tree. Like, I need to be in a pond swimming around. And so that was, for me, that was a very difficult season, because all I wanted to do, using this analogy, I just wanted to be a fish swimming around a pond, like where I fit in, where I was doing what I was naturally gifted to do. But I found myself in a race up a tree and I was just not good at it. And it was very discouraging, very demoralizing. And especially when you feel stuck and like there's no way out of it, it's a really hard, position to be in. And for me, that was one of the more difficult things that I've dealt with, is just kind of hanging on in that season until God moved me to my pond, in keeping with the analogy.
Yeah, there are so many people out there that can give you financial advice. Yourself, Dave Ramsey, a lot of all the financial advisors and financial coaches. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to go to one of these people for help, who's in debt? What do they look for? What could they look for in, for their help, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is often overlooked, but it's actually really valuable and helpful, is simply paying attention to where you're spending your money. There's so many people who don't do this. And so they'll just get to the end of the month and be like, all right, this is how much money I've left, or how much I don't have left. I know it's super common. And there's a huge, huge opportunity here. And so there's this guy, I don't even know his name, but there's a law called Pearson's Law, where it says when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured, performance improves. And I've always been fascinated by this. And I've observed, so like, okay, if I take myself driving down the highway, there's never been a time where I see a police officer holding the radar gun, pointing it at my car, that I don't hit the brakes. And the reason why is because he's measuring my performance. And as he is, my performance improves. So I slow down. Like, because he's measured my performance, that's why I improve. If he wasn't standing there, I would be driving faster than I am. So simply the fact that he's measuring my performance causes me to improve. Another example of this is I remember going to a nutritionist, and we were trying to identify some stuff with my health and my food and all the stuff. And so she said, I want you to write down every single thing you eat every day. And I started doing that. And simply because I was writing down every single thing that I was eating every day, I began eating better. Again, I'm writing it down. And so I'm kind of measuring my performance in terms of how I'm eating. And as I'm doing that, I'm eating better without even trying to eat better. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to do this and start eating better. I didn't even have to try. I just automatically was doing it. And it's the same way with our money. If we're not measuring what's happening, if we're not measuring where we're spending our money and paying attention to what's going on, then we're spending way more than we need to. And the irony, this is what's so crazy about it, is you don't have to try to spend less money. Like, you simply have to pay attention to where it's going. And by default, you will save money. Like, it just is a byproduct of that exercise. And so I'm often like, you can do the same things like the food journal and write down every single thing you spend in a month. And again, like, I will bet anyone like a bag of Justin's peanut butter cups that you will save money by doing that exercise. But for somebody who's like, well, I don't want to write it down, like, there are apps like Personal Capital or mint.com that you can use. You can connect your bank account, and in about 10 minutes, you can look back and see exactly where you've spent your money for the last 3 months. And you can know, all right, did I actually spend $500 on groceries like I keep thinking that I am? Or did I really spend $750? And so knowing that is so powerful, because once you know exactly how much you're spending, now you've identified, okay, well, I can work on that. I can fix it. But until you know that there's a problem, there's nothing to fix. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Money was a big point of contention in your marriage. How did you improve it?
Yeah. So Linda and I, we're just very different in how we view money and how we handle money. And so I'm much more of the saver. She's much more of the spender. And so one of the things that helped us a lot was tapping into God for wisdom, which is so funny and why I don't think of that quicker. But basically, I remember God just showing me that we're different, but we're different for a reason. He put us together for a reason. And so as I began valuing the way that she spends money, instead of just assuming that the way she does it is wrong, it just brought us into a position of unity. And so even though she's a spender, like, as I started asking her, like, all right, what's important to you? Like, where do you want to go financially? Like, what do you want to do with our finances? And like, started asking those questions instead of just assuming, I got this, she's just going to waste all her money. Like, I'm the one who needs to make, as I started doing that, then she started yielding kind of in my direction and was like looking, being more proactive to reduce her spending. And so together we just kind of came in unity by doing that. And that's something I'm always recommending to people, because if you can get in unity with your spouse with money, it's so powerful, because it's so easy to not be in unity with your spouse, but it's a big, big deal. So it's worth working hard at,
Yeah. As, people of faith and as Christians, you mentioned it a couple of times where you said, why didn't I look at the Bible beforehand about the verses about money? Why do you think that we don't look to the Bible about money and about wisdom for our finances?
Yeah, I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me,
Sure.
I don't know. I think it's just easy to forget that the Bible covers so many topics. Like, it's like God designed this to be a guidebook for us. And it shouldn't be surprising that he has answers to a lot of our questions still, And so money is one of them in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I don't know why I didn't go to it sooner, but my encouragement really, even beyond money, is I've been doing this more and more. It's like when I have a question about something, I'm like, I wonder if the Bible says anything about this. Like, that's really, who knows? Like, because I've never looked in specifically for that thing, even though I've read through the whole Bible. Like, when you actually go in looking for a specific answer to something, I think a lot of times you find much more than you think is there.
Yeah. The Bible, talks about that we need to give 10% of our income to God and to the church. You give 40% of your income each year. How and why did you start that?
Yeah, so it started about 10 years ago now. So I'm 41 now, but I remember when I was age 31, we had paid off all our credit cards at this point, and we were just trying to pay off our mortgage, which is a great place to be in, and like we were talking about before, we had all this momentum because we paid off all these other debts. And so now we had I think a couple $1,000s of extra money we were putting towards our mortgage each month, to pay down that mortgage as fast as possible. And I remember going to God and praying and saying, Hey, I want to get this paid off faster. Like, and I had a plan that it was going to take about 3.5 years to get it paid off. And I wanted it faster, and so I remember praying that. And I remember as I was praying that in this field, Like I felt like he spoke to my heart. If you really want to see me move on your finances, I want you to begin giving your age as a percentage of your income. And so I was 31 at the time, and I'm like, that's a big jump, because we were given like 11% or something. And so I went back and talked to Linda about it, and she got on board, and she's like, you know what? If God's asking us to do this crazy thing, I'll bet it's because he has something really cool on the other side of it. And so that month, kind of nervous, kind of scared, no idea what was going to happen, if we were going to be able to pay our bills, like how it was all going to work out. We began giving 31%. And the crazy thing is, when I did the math again, it's like, all right, now it should take like 10 years to pay off our mortgage, because we're giving all of our money away that we were putting towards our debt payoff. And the crazy thing is, it was 10 months later and our mortgage was paid off. And so it was just a crazy, crazy story of God's faithfulness as we kind of laid down our agenda of paying off our mortgage to pick up his, and how he still provided the thing that we wanted faster than it would have happened anyway. And so that's how the whole thing started. And we have just been continuing for the last 10 years to give our age as a percentage of our income. And yeah, it's just been a wild ride. It's been a really, really cool thing to be part of.
For those people that may not see that extra income coming in, or maybe giving a little bit more like you did, and they don't see that extra blessing or the extra income coming in, what would you say to them about that?
Are you talking about specifically like after giving or something?
Yeah, like after giving,
Yeah.
and they may still not have the money that they should have, to pay our bills or to pay food and things of that nature. And they're like, God, I gave this money, to you and to the charity that you told me to give, and I still don't have this money coming in.
Yeah. A couple different things. So I think the heart posture of how we give is really important. And I'll speak for myself, because I know that there were many times, when I was younger, like where, I don't know, like where I had strings attached to my giving and where like I was giving, it's like, all right, God, I'm going to give you this, but I'm expecting something back, like a little bit like putting money in a slot machine or something, and anyway, and I don't think that God is ever going to be reduced to a genie in a bottle or a slot machine type of thing. And so like, and I know not everybody's dealing with that, but that was something I was dealing with for a while. And I'm thankful that he kind of helped me work through that. And, in my case with this story, like, I gave that money not with the expectation really that he was going to help us pay off our house. Like I gave it with the expectation we're not going to be able to pay off our house anymore. Like it was a sacrifice of, you're asking me to do this, so I'm going to do it out of obedience, to you, and go on this adventure with you wherever you're taking it, even though I might not see the thing that I want to see. So I think that's important, that you're leading with the right heart posture of trust. The next thing I would say is that the time frame, the timeline, God's timeline on things is always different than ours. And I think that's important to understand, because, 2 Corinthians 9 is a great verse to read about this, that confirms for me that when we give, when we sow, we will reap. Like when we give, it will be given back to us. But the question is when and how. And I think the timeline is something that's difficult for us, because, I was just talking to my wife, Linda, today about something where it's like, I feel like we're waiting for this. Like, come on, God, we've been praying about this for so long. Like, let's go. And I think all Christians, like anybody who's walked with God for a while, knows that sometimes things just take longer than you want. So I think that's one point there. But then the other thing is that a lot of times they come back to you in ways that you aren't expecting. And so there's a lot here, because it's easy to just expect that God's going to answer your prayer with money. But there's so many other ways that he can answer your prayer. And to reduce him to only being our provider by using our man-made currency that we created, like, is limiting on God. Like, as God can answer our prayers, whatever they are, in so much more interesting and extravagant ways than just by dropping money on your porch, That's a whole bunch of different things, a whole bunch of different thoughts, but hopefully that kind of, answers some of that for somebody listening.
Amen. You tell readers in your book, and we'll talk about your book in a minute, that they don't have to be financial experts to be very successful with their finances.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think that's the thing. Again, like I said, I worked in the financial industry for a long time, and there tends to be, I kind of think the financial industry just wants us all to believe that money is really complicated and you got to be super smart and have finance degrees and read 100 money books in order to succeed. And that's just not true. It's not true at all. I mean, and honestly, that's why we wrote the book we did, because we wanted to show that this can be really simple. Like, you just need to do a few things, a few simple things, get them right, set them up, make them automatic, and then get on with your life. Like, in doing that, like, you can be moving forward and moving to a much better financial place than you are today. And so there's so many people that I think are just intimidated by it because we didn't learn about it in school. Our parents didn't teach us about it in many cases. And so, yeah, that's just part of my mission, is how do I help people understand and really believe that it doesn't have to be as difficult as they've led us to believe.
Yeah. Your book is called Simple Money, Rich Life. Most are not used to money being simple. How do you make it simple?
Yeah. So yeah, like, that's one of the things that I feel like God has gifted me at, back to that fish and squirrel analogy. Like, I feel like that's part of my gifting, is to take complicated ideas, particularly in the realm of finances, and make them simple and easy to understand. And so that's part of why we named it that. It's not simple in terms of like being childish or elementary, but just breaking it down to its simplest parts of what are the actual important things. Because yeah, there are so many different financial things that you can do, so many different types of investments you can make. But if we had to break this down to its most simple format, simple steps that anyone can take, like, what does that look like? And that's what we've worked really, really hard to do, is just eliminate the noise, eliminate the confusion, and just the unnecessary stuff that most people don't need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. For some people, and one of these people is myself, that may not have income coming in each week, maybe it's every other week, and you don't know what that income is going to be, or what that specific number is going to be. How will you tell someone to prepare or to budget, that money for that month?
Yeah. So yeah, that's it's a good problem. Like, I mean, good isn't a difficult problem. I'll say it that way. Um, and so I'm with you. Like, I've been living that for, yeah, probably 14 years now, like, of having a fluctuating income that goes up and down. And, and we'll have some good months, and then we'll have some really hard months where it's just really narrow and thin. And that's the journey of an entrepreneur. A lot of freelancers, it's just really, really common. So there is a strategy that I've come up with that I've found to be really, really helpful. It's a little bit numbers-ish. But I'll just boil it down again to make it as simple as possible for this podcast. But the idea is, when you have a steady paycheck, that is the easiest way to budget and manage your money, when you have a consistent amount coming in. So for us, in this situation we're in, what we need to do is mimic a paycheck. We need to find a way to mimic a paycheck. Okay. And so the way that we're going to do that is by averaging our pay for the last 3 months, 6 months, whatever, like, depending on what type of business it is, it might be cyclical. And so maybe you want to do it for the last year, but we want to average our monthly income and then live off of less than that. And ideally somewhere around 80% of that, or maybe 90% of what that average monthly income is. And so let's say that we have an average monthly income of $3,000 a month, okay? Or let's just say $5,000 a month, just for simplicity. And so what we want to do is, if we have an average monthly income of $5,000 a month for the last 3 months, we want to be living off of $4,000 or $4,500 a month. Like, that's what we want to be budgeting off of. And so, like, let's say this month we make $5,000 and we're going to live off of, say, $4,000. We're going to take that extra $1,000 and put that in a buffer account for the month, maybe next month, where we only make $3,000. Okay. And so then now we only made 3,000. Oh no, what are we going to do? It's like, we're going to pull $1,000 from our buffer account. So we now have 4,000 to spend for the month, which is how much we're budgeting off of. So that's a very simplified kind of answer to it. But that is the thing that I have found that has worked better than anything else. It's not perfect. It's never going to be a perfect solution. It's going to handle any and all up and downs, but it's better than the, oh, well, let's just see what happens this month and throw everything up in the air. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You have an interesting spin on your net worth. Tell us about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I stopped using the term net worth for our tracking our net worth. And we still do the exercise, but we renamed it. And we named it to assets under management. For two different reasons. So the first one is, I don't really like the term net worth, and I don't like the idea of determining my worth or value based on a number, whether it's really low or really high. That's not how I want to be determining my value, is by some number. And then the other thing is, the other reason we call it assets under management is that we believe, as Christian, that everything we have is God's, and we're just managing it for Him. So our house, our cars, our money in our savings account, our investments, like all of it is money that we are managing for Him, for His purposes, to be directed however He wants us to use it. And so with that being the case, I feel like calling it, this whole thing, our assets under management, is just a good reminder for me each and every time I open up the file, just to see that, hey, this isn't yours. Whatever number's on here, this isn't yours. This is actually God's, and you are just a manager. So you're just managing it, and it helps me keep that perspective, which has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's cool. As we get ready to end here, I always ask my guests to give, some type of encouragement. And I get, from your standpoint, what encouragement would you give to those that are maybe listening later on that are struggling with income or struggling with debt? And how, what encouragement would you give to them?
Two things. I think the first thing is to realize that I would study Ephesians 3:20. Okay. This idea that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all we can ask, think, or imagine. And, Dorsey, going back to when I was talking about that, you were asking me one of the most difficult seasons of my life. And it was when I was working that job that I was not a good fit in. I felt stuck. I felt hopeless. And I felt like, this is never going to change. This is how it's going to be the rest of my life. I'm doomed to this situation, whatever. And with God, we are never doomed. It never has to be that way the rest of our lives. And I think that's really important to understand, because it's so easy when you've lived in this circumstance or situation for so long to just begin to think that this is the way it is always going to be, or always has to be this way. And God is always able. And I think that's so important to remember. So that said, the next piece of that, like alongside that, is to actually pray with faith, bring God into your financial situation. And I say this knowing that some people might be like rolling their eyes and say, well, I have prayed, or I whatever. And it's like, I'm not dismissing that or taking away from that. And I've had seasons, again, where I've prayed for years and years and just felt like nothing was happening. So I get that. But at the end of the day, if God is our provider, if He's our source, like He is the one we need to go to. He is the one we need to continue bringing our frustrations, bringing our financial mistakes that we've made, bringing it everything to the foot of the cross, and to trust Him with it. And when we do that, and when we do that in obedience, as He directs us to, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you start this? Why don't you give this over here? Why don't you whatever? And some of those things, like, they might not be, well, that's never going to make a difference. That's never going to fix my problem. I've just noticed so many times that when God asks me to do something that feels like that's not going to help, it ends up being the thing. My path out of that job, that situation was so hard for me, involved me starting a blog talking about money. I never in a million years would have thought that would have been the thing that would have got me out of that situation. But God invited me to do that. And I'm really, really glad I took that step. And so that's my encouragement for anybody listening right now.
And right now, how are you guys, living? Are you guys out of debt now? all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been 100% debt free for many years now. I don't remember when. So we paid off that first mortgage, like I was telling you that story 10 years ago. Then we moved to a different town, ended up taking on another mortgage, and we paid that one off in a couple years because we had a lot of money we put down on that house. So it wasn't a whole lot. But yeah, we've been 100% debt free probably 5 or 6 years now. And I highly recommend it. It is a goal worth chasing. And like I was saying before, like this Ephesians 3:20 thing, like I think this is something that God wants for us, and so my encouragement, I guess, is don't believe the lie that that's impossible for you and that God can never do that. Because I've seen it happen in our own lives. I've seen it happen in so many of our readers' lives and hearing their stories. Like God is able, God is able, God is able. So yeah, throw it up on your wall and start praying about it and just go after it.
Amen. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We greatly appreciate having you.
Yeah, brother. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, guys and girls, thank you so much for listening. I hope you are encouraged and inspired by this episode of the Dorsey Ross Show. And until next time, God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for joining Dorsey Ross on this episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. Please like, share, and tell others about the show. Also, please check out the other podcast episodes. And if you would like, donate to this podcast and buy Dorsey a coffee. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.